I think there are many, many schools that I go to, and one of the questions I ask is, so what words or phrases come to mind when you think of the civil rights movement? Because I want to get a sense of who the kids are in the audience. And sometimes, usually I can get Dr. King, Rosa Parks, and that's kind of it. Segregation, maybe, and sometimes if I go somewhere else and they're like, Malcolm X, Black Panthers, and then they name other people, or they talk about, inclusion and freedom and, Black power and different things, then I know that they've had a different kind of education. But for the most part, the education about Black history and the education about the civil rights movement is still very limited, and it's a very specific narrative that needs to be expanded. And I learned a lot from her, because I was someone who was, and still am, trying to expand my understanding of the sort of deep, entrenched nature and systemic nature of racism in America, and so as someone who has been re-educating myself, right, for like 10, 15 years now, about these issues, and she has been doing that for so much longer, and in a sense never had to re-educate herself because she was raised knowing the truth about all of this. I learned a great deal from her about how to talk about the systemic nature of racism and how to position some of the issues that people sort of gloss over or sort of awkwardly reframe in ways that are problematic. I learned a lot about her from that. I learned a lot from her about that.
Got it.
Got it. So good.
It's a sophisticated structure. It's nonlinear. Why did you make that decision?
Because I like to complicate my life, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. Alternative structure seems to be something that I gravitate toward. In this particular case, the initial draft of the novel was linear, except for the prologue.
X was a critical triumph.
I am enough.
It is a YALSA popular paperback, a Walter Honor Book, an ALA Top 10 Choice for Young Adults, a Coretta Author Honor Book, and the NAACP Image Award winner. Let's all just be happy with it. Okay.
Exciting! The thing is, you don't know, right? Just like Malcolm, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what books you might publish. You don't know what awards you might win. You don't know what readers' hearts you will influence. I mean, that to me, the exciting thing about the awards is actually not the accolades. I don't really care about that stuff that much. What I care about is that it broadens the scope and the reach. It makes more money too. This is how I make a living. But to know that a reader has read this book and feels that there's an opportunity. To go into a juvenile facility where there's a handful of teenage boys who clearly have been struggling for a long time and perhaps made some poor choices, and to do a little talk with them and have them be sitting there looking at me like this, and then to have the library cart at the door. And and they're all looking at me like this, and I do my talk, and they're looking at me like this, and then I'm like, do you have any questions? And suddenly the hands go up, and they ask me questions, and then they're leaving, and they're taking the books. That feeling is much more powerful than the feeling of winning an award. It's a different kind of award, right? And so what I would say to you as students, this was a long answer to your very lovely question. What I would say to you as students is, you don't know, right? You just keep working. You don't know what's going to happen to the manuscript. A manuscript I started before I entered the program, that I still love. I finally sold to Candlewick this past year. You know what I mean? Those projects that you set aside to try to build your craft, they might resurrect themselves. I would never have pictured myself, right? When I was a first semester student in VCFA, if you had said, 10 years from now you're going to be writing a novel with Malcolm X's daughter, I would have laughed you out of the room. Just really believe in yourself and believe in your voice, and everything you do to develop your craft it's not about taking down your ideas, it's about building your communication skills. How do you take the ideas that you have in your heart, how do you take those stories that are deepest in you, and turn them into something that somebody else can appreciate and understand. It's about the communication of those stories, right? The craft is not about changing your story or your heart. It's not an attack against you personally, right? It's how do you make those words convince people? How do you make those words move people in the way that you want them to be moved? That's what it's about.